Just don't wear the stars, that's all it said. No greeting, no apology, no warmth. Just a wedding invitation from my younger sister with that one sentence scrawled at the bottom like an afterthought or a command. I held the card between my fingers, thick ivory paper with golden letters spelling out her name, Alison Munro, soon to be Alison Pierce. My thumb ran across the embossed text, but my mind was back in Kandahar, under fire, dragging Andrew Pierce out of a burning vehicle while mortars screamed overhead. He doesn't even know it was me. Or maybe he does now. Doesn't matter. Outside my window, the hangar lights of Fort Belvoir blinked dimly against the dusk. My uniform hung by the door, still crisp, its stars quietly gleaming beneath the fabric cover. I hadn't worn it in public for over a year. Not since they passed me over for promotion and sealed my name under false claims. Claims someone close must have made. I lit a cigarette, old habit, rarely indulged, and stared at the envelope again. For 6 years, silence. Then this. I could have said no. I should have said no. But something stirred in my gut. Not anger, not nostalgia, something colder. A need for air. Closure, maybe vengeance. Maybe something more dangerous. Truth. I slid the invitation back into its envelope, stood, and reached for my uniform. Not the stars, just the base. The part that carried the weight. Let them see who I am when I say nothing. You're still in uniform? That was the first thing my mother said. Not hello, not we've missed you, not even I'm proud of you. Just that. She barely glanced at my face before stepping aside, letting me cross the threshold of the Monroe house with the same practiced indifference she'd once used to dismiss my entire identity. The air inside smelled like lemon wax and memories I'd rather keep buried. Everything was exactly the same. The photo frames on the wall, all of them missing me. The centerpiece on the dining table, which used to be a pile of my textbooks and combat boots, now polished to sterile perfection. I set my duffel bag down near the coat rack. No one offered to help. Alison didn't even come downstairs. Barbara Munro, my mother, stood by the kitchen island, fingers wrapped too tightly around a half-empty glass of white wine. Her cardigan was beige, her pearls conservative, her words colder than the ice cubes clinking in her drink. Try not to make this weekend about you. That's how she greeted her eldest daughter, a lieutenant colonel who'd spent the last decade training troops and burying comrades. I looked her in the eye and said nothing. Words had always been her battlefield. I'd learned long ago that silence was my armour. Dinner was worse. A dozen family members, a few of Andrew's, none of mine. They laughed at old jokes. They passed around inside stories like fine wine. I sat at the far end, near the kitchen door, the seat that always felt temporary, disposable. Someone had even placed the wrong name card in front of me. Clara M., not Claire. A man named Colonel Halvers glanced at me twice, furrowed his brow, then finally said, "Weren't you in the Helmand Offensive, 2015? My mother cut in before I could answer. Claire's done some administrative work abroad, yes, security logistics. I felt the burn in my throat before I swallowed the wine. Administrative. My chest held the memory of a blast wave. My shoulder still bore shrapnel. But to her, to them, I was a footnote, a security guard in dress blues. Later, I stood alone on the back porch, the sky above Alexandria smeared with clouds. I could still hear the laughter from the dining room, distant and hollow. I lit another cigarette. Haven't smoked 2 in a day since Kandahar. Behind me, the door creaked. A voice floated out. "You don't have to stay for the toast if it makes you uncomfortable." It was Alison. I didn't turn around, just flicked ash into the wind. "You think I came to hear you toast?" I said quietly. She didn't answer. "I came to remind you I'm not gone." "You still light your cigarettes like you're in a war zone," Andrew said. I didn't flinch. I hadn't heard his voice in 7 years, but it hadn't changed. Still even, still calm, still laced with something dangerous beneath the surface. He stepped out onto the porch beside me, leaving the laughter of the party behind like a suit jacket tossed across a chair. "Did you come to check on me?" I asked, "or just to make sure I won't embarrass the bride?" He didn't smile, just leaned on the railing, letting the silence stretch between us. "I didn't know you were invited," he said. "Barbara doesn't send invitations, she sends warnings." I exhaled slow. "And I read them all the same." Andrew stared out into the darkness. His jaw tightened like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words that wouldn't be weapons. I could smell the bourbon on his breath, not enough to dull the nerves, just enough to confess something he wasn't ready to say. "Why her?" I asked. That caught him off guard. "You could have married anyone," I added, "but you picked the one person who knew exactly how to gut me with a smile." He didn't deny it, didn't defend her. "You think I don't know what this looks like," he said, "but it wasn't a strategy." "Then what was it?" He looked down, then back at me. "I got tired of being saved." That hit harder than I expected. I'd dragged him out of a crater in Helmand with a severed artery and a broken leg, pinned his chest with my knee to stop the bleeding, whispered nonsense to keep him awake. I'd carried him across fire for 10 minutes that felt like eternity, and now he was standing here, in my sister's house, asking me to forget it all. "She made me feel normal," he added, "like I could have a life that didn't include trauma reports and survivor's guilt." "So you picked her because she never saw you bleed," I said. He turned his head sharply. "Maybe." The silence that followed wasn't bitter, it wasn't even angry, it was surrendered. Like we'd both realised the same thing at the same time, that what once connected us was a battlefield, not a future. And maybe we were both tired of bleeding. He took a step back. "Your mother asked me to keep you from saying anything tomorrow, about the war, about anything that might confuse the guests." I let the laugh escape this time, hollow, like the porch under our feet. "Of course she did," I said. "I told her I'd try," he said. Then, after a pause, "But I didn't promise anything." He left without another word. And that's when I knew. Andrew Foster wasn't just a groom. He was the first crack in a house built on silence. The hotel desk was too polished, too still. A coffee I hadn't touched had gone lukewarm beside a leather folder that held the kind of paper that shouldn't exist. My fingers hovered over it like it might burn. In a way, it already had. I pulled the page free. Official letterhead. Watermark from the Department of Defense. Redacted names, but not redacted enough. I knew the cadence of that accusation, the phrasing too precise to be anonymous. Accusations of falsified deployments, inflated field narratives. They called my Bronze Star political. But the word that cinched it, the one that never should have been there, was irregardless. I had only ever heard that used in one place, our kitchen table, while Haley justified another mess with a fake smile and a mangled vocabulary. I didn't need the AI analysis to confirm it, but I had it anyway. 96% linguistic match to Haley Cole, 7 years ago. 2 months before my promotion was quietly delayed, before my record went cold, my future shelved, all because someone needed me small enough to step over. She hadn't just hated me. She tried to erase me. I stared at the report until the letters blurred. My career hadn't been sabotaged by enemies overseas, but by blood, my own sister. A knock pulled me out of the spiral. Room service. I opened the door, numb, and a bellboy handed over a tray, and there it was, a handwritten note resting beneath the cutlery. It read, "You might not speak, but you always see too much. H." No apology, no remorse, just confirmation. She knew I'd find it. She expected me to stay quiet, like always. I didn't tear the note. I folded it neatly and slid it into the folder right beside the report, not as a keepsake, but as evidence. The kind of truth no one could unhear once spoken aloud. For the first time in years, I felt my hand tremble, not from fear, but restraint. I could burn her whole world down in 5 sentences. I could forward the report to every media outlet that covered the wedding. But power wasn't always volume. Sometimes it was timing. I picked up my phone, scrolled to the contact I had saved under Foster, Dust and Blood. I hadn't texted him since Helmond. "We need to talk. Tonight." The dots appeared instantly. Rooftop, 10 p.m, no one else. The war wasn't over. It had just changed uniforms. The rooftop bar sat quiet above the city, the kind of quiet that came after choices had already been made. A hush not from peace, but from the aftermath of too many lies left untold. I spotted Andrew near the edge, hands gripping the railing like it was the only thing anchoring him. He didn't turn when I approached, didn't flinch, just spoke. "I figured you'd come. You invited me. Didn't think you'd say yes." I stepped beside him, far enough for space, close enough to strike. "I read the report," I said. "The one Haley wrote." He didn't blink. "I suspected." "You knew?" His jaw clenched. "I couldn't prove it, but I knew the timing, knew the language. I've heard her twist stories since we were teenagers." "So you married her anyway?" He finally looked at me, and he looked tired, not just from the day, but from carrying a truth too long without release. "I tried to convince myself she was a version of safety," he said. "After the minefield, after watching men I trained with vanish in seconds, I didn't want chaos anymore. She offered order. She offered illusion." He didn't argue, just sipped his drink. "I didn't marry her because I forgot what you did. I married her because I wanted to forget who I became after." "Then why salute me?" He turned to face me fully now. His eyes didn't flinch. "Because no one else in that room deserved to know the weight of who you are. Not the version in the family's photo albums, not the caricature Haley painted. I owed you more than silence." I studied him. "You let her lie. You watched them erase me." "I couldn't stop them," he said. "But I didn't join them. That's why I stood. That was the moment I chose." I didn't reply. He exhaled, setting the glass down. "You ever wonder why I never spoke about Helmond? Why no one knew the real story of that day?" I nodded. He pulled something from his coat pocket, a small medal faded with time, a bronze star identical to mine. "I declined it," he said. "Told them to give the write-up to you instead. Said the wrong person bled." I froze. "You crawled through gravel to disarm a mine I stepped on. You bled for me, and they still gave me the podium." His voice cracked, just slightly. "I kept this, not because I earned it, but to remind me that someone did." I stood still, the wind curling around us like a witness. For the first time, Andrew Foster looked nothing like the polished officer in the photos. He looked like a man who remembered every moment of his survival and the woman who made it possible. "I don't want her protection," he said finally. "Not if it comes at the cost of yours." I let the silence settle before I spoke. "Then don't ever let my name protect yours again." He nodded, slowly, gravely. "I won't." I turned to leave, but he called after me. "Rebecca?" I paused. "Thank you, for my life, and for making me want to deserve it." I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Some debts don't need collecting, they just need remembering. The reception glowed with practiced elegance, crystal chandeliers, linen tablecloths, a string quartet humming something classical and forgettable. My place card, tucked behind a pillar near the emergency exit, read R. Cole, no rank, no honour, just the leftover syllables of a name this family had long since buried. I sat at table 12, sipping lukewarm champagne, invisible in full view. Haley glided across the room like she owned the air. Her white gown shimmered like it was stitched from attention. People clung to her orbit, laughing too loudly, nodding too eagerly. I watched her from the shadows, unnoticed, unwanted, but not unarmed. Then came the toast. She stood beneath the main chandelier, a spotlight of applause framing her. The mic in one hand, a flute of Dom Perignon in the other. "Family," she began, "is complicated, but we show up for each other, don't we?" Laughter rippled. I felt it coming. "And look," she gestured toward me, "even my big sister decided to fly in, all the way from, well, whatever secret base she guards now." A few chuckles, a few nervous glances. I didn't blink. "She's our family's silent sentinel," Haley continued, "always watching, always guarding doors." The crowd laughed harder, the kind of laugh that stings before it fades. "She used to say she was fighting wars," Haley added with a grin, "but we all know she's just avoiding family dinners." More laughter. I felt the pulse of shame hit my chest, not because it hurt, but because I knew how familiar it was. This wasn't new, this was a ritual, and rituals are harder to kill than lies. Barbara chimed in from her table, her voice cold and practiced. "She's always been the dramatic one, but at least she's punctual." I stood, not fast, not furious, just firm. The room hushed mid-laugh. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Someone's wine glass clinked too loud in the silence. Andrew turned to me. His eyes didn't flicker. They held something else. Recognition. Haley's smile faltered for the first time. "Oh, come on," she said, her voice lighter than breath. "It's just a joke. Lighten up, Rebecca." I didn't move. I didn't speak. That's when Andrew did. He walked forward, slow and deliberate, each step peeling back layers of performance from the room. People turned. The photographers pivoted. The quartet stopped playing. He stopped in front of me, 1 pace away. Then he saluted, a sharp, crisp, military salute, full form, no mockery. "Ma'am," he said, voice clear, "please forgive my wife." Gasps echoed, audible ones, the kind that slapped silence. He turned to the crowd. "This," he said, "is Major General Rebecca Cole, my commanding officer, the woman who saved my life in Helmand." No one breathed. The mic slipped from Haley's fingers. It hit the floor like a dropped grenade. She swayed, a half step back, then collapsed into her chair, pale and silent. Barbara rose sharply, but said nothing. There were no words strong enough to hold up the lies they'd built. I didn't move. I didn't need to. The truth was now louder than their laughter. For a long breath, no one moved. The chandelier flickered slightly overhead, as if unsure whether to continue playing its part in this carefully rehearsed evening. Andrew's salute dropped slowly, precisely, his hand returning to his side with the weight of closure. People stared, not at him, at me, not because I asked them to, but because silence had finally become unbearable. Someone in the second row stood, a tall man in a navy blazer, shoulders still squared by years of discipline. Colonel Reardon, retired, 73rd Engineering Battalion. The same man who once told me, "You'll never outrank your name." Now he saluted, steady, clean, measured. A second person rose, General Park, former West Point instructor, stern, dismissive once, now solemn, saluting, then another. A woman I didn't know by name, but recognized by posture, former intelligence. Her eyes met mine, unwavering, then a fourth, then a fifth. In moments, a wave of salutes spread through the room. Not coordinated, not planned, just real. Authentic recognition slicing through decades of denial. The ones who had once whispered about me now had nothing left to say. Their silence reeked of shame. Barbara sat frozen, fingers clenched around a napkin that had long since slid to the floor. Her pearls gleamed like accusations. She opened her mouth, closed it. There was nothing rehearsed for this moment. Haley hadn't moved. Her face was pale, her expression suspended somewhere between disbelief and dread. A queen dethroned by one sentence. I didn't gloat, I didn't move, because sometimes standing still is the loudest rebellion. The orchestra never resumed. The photographers, confused at first, began snapping photos again, clicks echoing like distant artillery, but the room wasn't watching them. It was watching me, some of them with awe, some with fear, but most with the dawning realization that history had just shifted. I didn't offer a speech, I didn't take the mic, because after years of being silenced, the most powerful thing I could do was let the truth echo on its own. Andrew stepped aside, granting me the space that no one else ever had. And in that space, something shattered. Not glass, not porcelain, perception. It broke. And what remained was raw, unfiltered and real. Major General Rebecca Cole, a name they had tried to scrub from the family tree, now etched into the room like stone. The hotel lounge was almost too perfect. Dim lighting, velvet chairs, the scent of oversteeped tea, an expensive apology. I chose a table in the corner, not for privacy, but for clarity. Barbara arrived 3 minutes late, like she always had, enough to assert control, but not enough to be called out. Her hair was perfect, pearls again. Of course. But her hands trembled slightly as she set her purse down. That, at least, was honest. She didn't greet me, just sat. I didn't offer small talk, just waited. It was never personal, she said finally, smoothing the hem of her blouse like it was a weapon. You were just difficult to explain. I was inconvenient, I corrected, to your version of family. She flinched at the precision. Barbara folded her hands, fingers tight like a prayer. You have to understand, after your father died, there was so much pressure, expectations, appearances. I didn't know how to defend you without... Her voice trailed. Erasing me? A pause. Yes. She didn't cry. Barbara Cole didn't cry, but her voice thinned like smoke. Do you know what it's like, I said, to be mourned at your own father's funeral while standing 10 feet away from the casket? Her mouth twitched. I didn't ask them to ignore you. No, I said, you didn't have to. You trained them. That landed. For the first time in years, she looked like a woman caught under her own reflection. I was protecting Haley, she whispered. No, I said, leaning forward, voice low but sharp. You were protecting the image of Haley. The version that smiled, obeyed, wore white. You sacrificed the daughter who didn't match your brochure. Barbara's knuckles were white now. Her pearls, those perfect polished symbols, suddenly looked like a noose. I thought you'd be fine, she said quietly. You always were. That's the lie you needed to believe, I said, so you could justify turning away. She looked down. For a moment, I saw the woman who used to braid my hair, who used to say, "You're too strong for this world." I used to think that was a compliment. Now I knew it was a warning. Is there anything I can do now? She asked. Not defiant, just tired. Yes, I said. When someone asks why your daughter doesn't come home for holidays, don't say it's complicated. Say it's because you chose silence over her voice. She blinked fast, once, twice, and when they ask where your other daughter is, I added, standing slowly, tell them she's somewhere she doesn't need to apologize for existing. Barbara's voice caught in her throat. Rebecca. I looked at her, truly looked. You erased me once, I said. Don't rewrite me after I'm gone. I turned to leave. She didn't follow. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was final, and somehow that was mercy. She was waiting for me at the cafe near the hotel, one of those places that tried too hard to feel effortless. Glass windows, clean beige cushions, the kind of cafe that smelled like frothed milk and manufactured civility. Haley sat in a booth at the back, sunglasses still on despite the shade, her hair swept into a loose chignon that was meant to look relaxed, but took at least 40 minutes and 2 mirrors. I didn't sit right away. I watched her fidget with her straw, her manicured fingers twitching. So, she said, like she was trying to sound amused. That was dramatic. I raised an eyebrow. The wedding or the collapse? She didn't laugh, just sighed. You embarrassed everyone, she muttered. No, I said, sliding into the seat across from her. I told the truth. That tends to feel embarrassing when you've built your life around a lie. She bristled, the way she always did when words hit too clean. Look, I went too far. The gate guard thing. It was a joke. No, I said. It was a weapon. She scoffed. Oh, please, you've always made everything so heavy. You sent the tip. Haley blinked, a flicker of something. Panic, recognition, guilt. What? You sent the anonymous report that nearly derailed my promotion, claimed I falsified combat records, that I didn't save Andrew, that I embellished the whole thing. Her mouth opened, then shut. The silence swelled. I reached into my folder and slid 2 sheets of paper across the table. One was the whistleblower complaint, the other a linguistic analysis, 97% match. Syntax, vocabulary, phrases only she used. Irregardless, I said softly, you used it in your high school essays. You used it in this report. Haley's face flushed. It was a moment. I was angry. Everyone kept comparing us. Dad, Mom, teachers. You were the soldier, the savior, the perfect story. I just wanted space. So you tried to bury me? She didn't answer. I had to explain to command why my record was being reviewed. I had to sit through months of silence. You never even asked what that did to me. You were always stronger, she muttered. You didn't need... I needed truth. The words landed hard, making her flinch. Andrew never knew, did he? I asked. No, she admitted. He wouldn't have married me if he did. That truth hung like smoke between us. Why did you do it? I asked, genuinely this time. Haley looked up, eyes red-rimmed but still defiant. Because you always walked into the room and made it yours, even in silence, and I... Her voice cracked. I never knew how to compete with that. You didn't have to, I said. You could have just stood beside me. She looked away. I envy you, she whispered. Not your stars or your speeches. Yourself. Your conviction. I've only ever been a version of what they wanted. For the first time, I believed her. But belief wasn't forgiveness. I stood. You hurt me in ways the battlefield never did, I said, and I survived both, but only one made me question my worth. Haley's voice broke. I'm sorry. I know, I replied, but apologies don't rebuild legacies. And then I walked out. Not triumphant, not wounded, just free. The room was smaller than I expected. Just 60 chairs, a clean podium, 2 flags behind me, 1 American, 1 Army. No fanfare, no music. But somehow the weight in the air was heavier than any parade I'd ever marched. They called it the Monroe Briefing, named not by me, but by a junior public affairs officer who thought poetic justice still had a place in D.C. Outside, cameras clicked. Inside, the air hummed with restraint. A few journalists shuffled in their seats, unsure whether this was redemption or revolution. I adjusted the mic. I won't be long, I began. The silence that followed wasn't passive, it was deliberate. Everyone was waiting. They'd read the leaks, they'd seen the wedding clip, they'd whispered about my name for years. Now they wanted answers, closure, maybe confession. I didn't come here to clean my record, I said, because it was never dirty. A murmur stirred. I came because silence serves no one but the liar, and I've been silent long enough. Screens around the room lit up, projected images from Kandahar, mission transcripts, testimony redacted for safety. Then a photo, me, bloodied, kneeling over a wounded soldier, Andrew Foster. For years, I continued, my name was filed under disciplinary review. For what? For being too quiet, too female, too unwilling to play politics. But I kept serving, not because they asked me to, but because soldiers deserve better. I paused, let them feel the shift. Today, I'm launching the Monroe Foundation, a space for servicewomen whose truth was dismissed, delayed, or destroyed. We'll fund legal aid, psychological support, and, most importantly, we'll amplify voices that were silenced so others could stay comfortable. The room was silent, and then came the questions. Colonel Monroe, one reporter stood. Do you blame your family? I looked at her squarely. No, I blame the system that taught them I was only valuable if I fit a mould. My family failed me, yes, but they were trained too. Another asked, why now? I smiled, not warmly, but with purpose. Because healing is not silence, it's sound. And it's time. Afterward, people clapped. Some rose, some cried, but I didn't stay for praise. As I stepped down, a young soldier approached me, freshly commissioned, eyes wide, saluted me with full form. Thank you, Mum, she said, for making it through, so the rest of us don't have to alone. I returned the salute. No stars on my shoulder, but the weight was finally mine to carry, and I carried it well. The Foundation launch event had begun to wind down. The cameras were packed, the press had moved on to spin their headlines, and I was halfway through a lukewarm coffee in the back green room when my assistant knocked softly. Ma'am, she said, hesitating, you might want to see this. She handed me her phone. A live stream. A woman standing at the secondary podium we'd set up for open testimonials. Designer coat, oversized sunglasses, posture practiced like a politician. Haley. I stared at the screen, unmoving. I'm not here for sympathy, she said, voice clipped, or forgiveness. The crowd murmured. Some recognized her. Others just saw another polished woman with a rehearsed story. But I knew better. I knew that tone. It wasn't regret, it was strategy. I am Haley Cole Foster, she said, and I owe you all a truth I denied for years. My heart didn't race. It slowed, braced. I sent the tip, she continued. 7 years ago, I accused my sister of fabricating her missions. I undermined her clearance. I cost her a promotion that was already hers by merit. The room fell silent again, the kind of stillness that screams louder than applause. I did it because I was jealous, she went on, because she made my success look like privilege instead of merit, because she stood for things I couldn't fake, and because I thought if I could dull her light, maybe mine would shine brighter. I set the coffee down. She didn't fight me, not then. She didn't even know it was me. And even when she found out, she didn't retaliate. She did what she always does. She served anyway. She removed the sunglasses then. Her eyes were red. But not from tears, from exhaustion. And now she has a movement, a cause, a foundation in her name. I have a shattered public image, a marriage that's unraveling in real time, and the knowledge that I helped destroy the one person who would have protected me, even if I didn't deserve it. A pause. Do I regret it? Yes. But not just because I got caught. I regret it because it didn't break her. It made her undeniable. I could hear the ripple in the audience, whispers, gasps, murmurs that would become trending clips and articles before the hour ended. Then Haley looked into the camera and spoke, not to the audience, but to me. You win, Rebecca, she said, but I think you always did. I was just the last one to see it. Then she walked off stage. No hugs, no apology, no resolution wrapped in sentiment. Just a mic left swinging slightly, and a legacy she couldn't control any more. My assistant looked at me. Should we respond? I shook my head. No, I said softly. Let the truth breathe. It doesn't need my permission anymore. I turned to the window, watching the crowd disperse into the golden afternoon light. A few saluted me from across the square, others just nodded, quiet with understanding. Haley's confession would go viral. But that wasn't the twist. The twist was, it didn't matter anymore. Italy didn't ask me who I used to be. That's why I stayed. The villa outside Siena was modest, 2 bedrooms, a terracotta roof, grapevines that didn't care about rank or reputation. In the mornings, the breeze carried the scent of rosemary and wood smoke. In the evenings, I poured wine into quiet glasses and read old mission reports like they were letters from a past life. The stars, the medals, the salutes, they were all tucked in a drawer I never opened, not because I'd forgotten them, because they'd served their time. Now it was my turn. A letter arrived one Tuesday, no return address, but I recognised the handwriting, delicate, precise, hesitant. Inside was a short note. You were never loud, but you were always heard. Alison. No apology, no request, just a line that didn't beg for reconciliation, only recognition. I folded the letter and placed it between the pages of my favourite novel. Let it rest where it belonged, in the past, but not discarded. The Monroe Foundation had grown beyond me. They didn't need my face anymore, only my name and the story that came with it. Others had stepped in, former captains, counsellors, activists, women who'd been silent too long and finally found a microphone. I wasn't leading anymore, I was watching, and somehow that felt like the greatest command of all. One afternoon, a young journalist asked to interview me. She flew from New York, brought 2 cameras and a list of questions she'd prepared like battle orders. "Why didn't you speak sooner?" she asked. I thought for a long moment. Then I said, "Because when truth is ready, it doesn't whisper, it roars." She paused, nodded, and turned off the recorder. "Off the record," she said. "Do you miss them? Your family?" I sipped my wine. "I miss who I thought they were," I said, "not who they chose to be." She didn't press. When she left, I walked barefoot through the vineyard, dusk sinking into the hills like an exhale. This wasn't a fairy tale ending. No tearful reunions, no parades, just peace. The kind you earn after weathering every storm without becoming one. In the distance, a neighbour's child laughed, a stray dog barked. Life went on, not because it ignored the past, but because it had finally made room for it. I wasn't rebuilt, I was rewritten, and this time I held the pen.